Hey guys, it's Michelle, and today's video is going to be all about different conspiracy theories surrounding Jim Morrison. So Jim Morrison was the lead singer of the popular band The Doors, and sadly on July 3rd, 1971, Jim Morrison joined the notorious 27 Club, which is full of different actors and singers who have died at the age of 27. You guys know how I feel about the 27 Club. I don't think it's relevant to their age whatsoever. There are a lot of people in the 27 Club who I feel like it just doesn't, I don't know, like their deaths aren't suspicious at all. However, I do think that Kurt Cobain and Jim Morrison are the two deaths of the people in the 27 Club that I think are personally really weird. I think there's a lot of different conspiracies that could be found around those two people in specifics. So I've already done a video on Kurt Cobain's death and like different conspiracy theories surrounding it. And today's video is going to obviously be centered around Jim Morrison. And even though these two have weird deaths and they both died at the age of 27, and there's a lot of questions surrounding their death, I don't really think it has anything to do with their age. But let's get into it. So on July 3rd, 1971, Jim Morrison was found dead by his girlfriend slash wife at the time. They say, like, if you look it up, it says that they were like married, but they weren't technically legally married. So most people just call Pamela Curson his girlfriend. And Pamela found Jim Morrison dead in their Paris, France apartment inside of their bathtub. The final cause of death was a heart failure. However, there was no autopsy performed because it is not required by French law. So we don't really know for sure his true cause of death, which is once again a reason that a lot of people speculate different things about his death in general. Because there was no foul play expected and because it's not required by French law, the autopsy not being performed was pretty normal, I guess. However, if I were their parents, like, I feel like I would demand an autopsy. A 27-year-old doesn't just die, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's obviously, if it's not drug related and we don't know, like, why wouldn't you want to know if it was drug related or something? You know what I mean? Like, or if it was like a heart attack, like, you would want to know if that was your kid. I don't know, that's just like my opinion, but we will get into the different conspiracy theories surrounding Jim Morrison's death. The first conspiracy theory is I guess not even really a conspiracy theory, it's just like a theory, and it's kind of the most logical one, so to speak. It's, in my opinion, I don't think it's the most logical one because there's just a lot of weird things about it, but according to like the general public who actually believe that Jim Morrison is dead, this is what they believe. So basically the theory is that Jim Morrison overdosed on heroin, which led to heart failure, and obviously that led to his own death. This is something that Pamela Curson said is what happened. However, because of there not being an autopsy, we will have no way to prove that this is what happened to Jim Morrison, which is what I think is suspicious in general, because like I said before, I would 100% want, like, my family member, my friend, anything to have an autopsy. If they died at the age of 27, that's so fucking young. Like, you would want them to have an autopsy to just be sure. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's what I would say. Like, that's just my personal opinion. So to me, that theory doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, yeah, in the long run, it does make sense. Like, oh, you overdosed, like, on heroin, you had a heart attack, like, you died. Like, that's, like, it makes sense in the scheme of things, but like with all the evidence behind it and the different holes that we will go into later in the video, I feel like this theory is like the least logical, even though it's like the logical one. So the second theory is that he was murdered. It's kind of hard to see like who he could have been murdered by. A lot of people think different things. People suspect Pamela, people suspect drug dealers, people suspect a lot of things. So basically 36 years after Jim Morrison died, a different story came out. Sam Burnett, who was a former Paris nightclub manager, claims that he was the one to find Jim Morrison dead. This obviously creates like kind of a hole in the entire story because Pamela was the one to find him dead. Here's what Sam Burnett wrote in his book. The flamboyant singer of The Doors, the beautiful California boy, had become an inert lump crumpled in the toilet of a nightclub. And according to Sam Burnett, he believes two drug dealers took Jim Morrison's dead body from the nightclub to his apartment into his bathtub. This obviously has a lot of holes. So Sam Burnett is the club manager, and he is saying that he walked into the bathroom of his clubs and apparently saw Jim Morrison dead on the toilet of the bathroom in the club that he manages. So this is obviously really weird because it doesn't match up with Pamela's story at all. So I think that this I don't know, because, like, this guy doesn't really, like, necessarily have a much of a reason. Like, I mean, I guess, like, you could say, like, he would make money from his book, but, like, 36 years later, I feel like it's really specific and really strange for him to come out with a story, and it's kind of, like, a detailed story. So, like, he thinks that Jim Morrison died in his nightclub of a heroin overdose, like he did, according to Pamela's story as well. And then he claims that 2 drug dealers came and carried Jim Morrison's dead body from the nightclub to his apartment in Paris. This obviously doesn't make a lot of fucking sense, because why the hell wouldn't you call the police? Why wouldn't you call the ambulance? Like, a celebrity has died in your nightclub. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't just, like, let some random drug dealers, like, take his dead body away. Like, come on, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I find it pretty interesting. However, like, it would be pretty hard for, like, 2 random guys to, like, grab, like, a dead body and, like, just transport the dead body all the way from, like, a nightclub to an apartment. I feel like that would look very suspicious, obviously, so I don't necessarily think that that makes sense. Something is not adding up. Pam McCurson had a completely different story that didn't even include a nightclub in general. She claims that they went to the movies, they went out to dinner, and then that night they went to the apartment and listened to records and then fell asleep. And then sometime during the middle of the night, Jim Morrison woke up feeling ill, so he decided to take a hot bath, which is where Pamela found him dead inside the bathtub of their apartment. So her story has nothing to do with a nightclub, and it's at that point, like, who do you believe? It's kind of weird. Like, first of all, in my opinion, I think it's weird that you would wake up in the middle of the night and be like, I don't feel too good, let's have a hot bath. Like, I don't know, I feel like that just doesn't, it just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe people do that. I've never done that, so, like, let me know if you do that or if you think that's normal. I mean, maybe it is, I don't know, but what I think is weird mostly is how drastically different the 2 stories are. However, in both stories, they believe that Jim Morrison overdosed on heroin. I find this interesting, except for Pamela's story has changed multiple times. She said that he wasn't even on drugs, and then she said that he was, and she said that he overdosed, and she said that he didn't, so her story changed multiple times. It all seems very confusing. However, in this situation, I think that if he was dead, he was probably killed. But I really don't think he's dead, which we'll get into for our last theory. I think that it's interesting, like, theory that, like, something had to do with the drug dealers. Like, maybe the nightclub incident was true, Pam was there, and maybe it was somewhat her fault that Jim Morrison, like, had these drugs. Maybe they were laced with something. Like, I don't know, maybe it's, like, a huge, like, conspiracy within itself, is maybe that there was some type of foul play involved, because this nightclub manager seems to really believe his own story and believe that he genuinely found Jim Morrison dead, and, like, apparently the drug dealers basically made him not call the ambulance and let them take the body to the apartment. I don't know, maybe, like, they took the body to the apartment and asked Pam what she wanted to do, and that's where they set it up. Honestly, who knows? I feel like this is just a really weird situation, because, like, why are there so many different stories? Why was Pam changing her story so much? I don't know, it's all very weird to me. But, like, who do you guys think could have murdered him if he really was murdered? I feel like I don't even, like, think too far into that, because I genuinely think he's still alive. And that is our final theory, and the most popular theory surrounding Jim Morrison. First weird thing about Jim's death is, according to Pamela and according to most people besides, like, the nightclub owner, only 3 people saw Jim Morrison's dead body. Now, this is assuming that Pam's story is true. So the 3 people that saw Jim's body was obviously Pamela, Elaine Ray, who was a friend of the couple, and the doctor who signed the death certificate. What's really weird to me is that his parents, his family, nobody went to identify his body. Now, you might think, like, this is weird because obviously his girlfriend was there, but still, a lot of parents tend to do that when their kid dies, or anyone in general. Like, someone has to usually go identify the body, other than the person that was there at the scene of the crime, because that's just kind of a thing that happens. Like, even when Amy Winehouse died, she died, like, her bodyguard found her dead, and in her own house. So like they knew it was her obviously, but her parents still went to go like identify her body. And I don't know, I feel like it's kind of like a last goodbye in a sense. Like obviously like there's funerals and stuff. It's kind of like a weird situation in my opinion, because I feel like you would just want to see your kid, like, I don't know, and also I would personally want to demand an autopsy, because a 27-year-old just doesn't die, you know what I mean? I would want to know the exact reason that my kid is dead. Like, that's just my opinion. Maybe his parents are different, but I feel like that's kind of a normal parent thing. Like I said, when Amy Winehouse died, there was many like toxicology reports, even though people assumed that she died of like an overdose of alcohol. So there's still usually an autopsy, toxicology, whatever, and there's usually a point where you identified the body. Why would you not want to see your kid's body? Like, I don't know, like, I feel like you just need to, like, I would want to go verify that shit, like, you know what I mean? But they didn't, and as soon as like, the death certificate was, like, finished, he was immediately put into a sealed casket. His funeral was completely closed casket, which is another kind of a weird thing. I mean, some people do have closed casket funerals, but usually not when people just like die of like a heart failure. Usually it's like if someone died, like if they were shot or something like that, because then obviously their body might not be in the right like figure of themselves. But when somebody just dies of a heart failure, you would assume that the funeral will probably be open casket. So that means none of his friends, none of his family saw his dead body at all. How do you go about, like, I don't know, I feel like I wouldn't believe it. He's a celebrity, like, I just wouldn't believe it, you know? Just 3 days after he was found dead, he was already buried. And like I said, his funeral was a closed casket funeral, which means no one saw his body. Also, something pretty weird is, according to a lot of his friends, Jim told them multiple times that he would one day fake his death, which, I mean, what the fuck? And the keyboardist of The Doors, Ray Manzarek, even said, "I often wonder if his death has been an elaborate charade." So these are people like close to him saying stuff like this, and perhaps the most interesting piece of evidence, in my opinion, comes from John Densmore, the drummer of The Doors, when he said this.
And Jim was a crazy guy who no one I've ever met would be more capable of faking their death than him. But he also, I don't want to discount, I watched him turn into an alcoholic with a disease. He's dead. Sorry. I'm sorry.
I know. The way he said it just genuinely makes me feel like he did fake his death, and maybe his friends have the same suspicion. I don't know. Maybe they truly believe it. Like I said, none of them saw the body. No one did, besides the 3 people that we know of and potentially the nightclub people. But we don't even know if that story is true. But for what we know for sure is that 3 people saw the body, and none of which were his family members, which is very strange. Also, may be important to note that Pamela Curson died just 3 years after Jim Morrison of an overdose. Maybe it's even possible that she faked her death as well because she wanted to be with Jim. I don't know. I feel like it's nice to think like that, but I really like high-key believe it. I definitely believe he faked his death. It makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of weird things about his death in particular that doesn't really add up, and to be honest, the thought of him faking his death explains all of those things, such as like the no autopsy, the being buried after 3 days, like really quickly, closed casket, no family members or friends saw his body. Like, there's just a lot of weird things about his death in general. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Like I said, let me know what you think about these conspiracy theories in the comments below, and also let me know what other celebrities you want me to make conspiracy theories on. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram, because I'm always posting really dope shit on there, and subscribe for new videos every single day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye! And although my pride